So, hello everyone. I just want to, so there's a lot of things going on, and I don't know how much you know about DSC. So who's never heard of DSC at all? And there might be a few. So you've heard about it. Okay, who's played with DSC at least a little? All right. So we never touched DSC? Never touched DSC? Okay, pretty much half and half. All right, that's fine. So I want to go back a bit to the beginning, explaining the very basics. And it's going to be very quick. So if you have any question, raise your hand, and I will try to answer the questions. A bit of background, because usually I try not to do it, but a bit of background is I've been using DSC for a very long time now. So it started with WMF4, so the Windows Management Framework 4. That was released at the same time as Windows 2012 R2, and that's been backward ported to some extent. And recently I've been contracted by Microsoft to help with the DSC team. So that's been quite recent, and I've been helping them, trying to understand where the community is at and where to take it forward, how to enable the community and things like this. So I'm going to get into a bit more details into this. So this is just very basic. So at the moment, there's no real agenda. I just want to make sure you take as much as you can out of it. I've got a lot of slides, a lot of content, but I want to make sure I address the actual questions you have. And it's very hard for me to do it from front, to just plan what you know and what you don't know. So I really want you to engage and ask me questions if you're not too sure about the things. If you're not too sure about what DSC is about, I'm going to start explaining the basics. If you have questions, raise your hand. And then we are going to take it wherever you need answers. So they're probably going to be different levels of questions. And if we're staying too long in some state, I'm just going to say, we can move along, and then I will answer questions maybe more ad hoc when we get a break or something. So what is DSC? Very first element. So everyone's been doing some scripting with PowerShell, I assume? Yes, pretty much. I see notes. Okay. So everyone's been doing PowerShell scripts. When you do a script, it's imperative execution of the language. You just tell it what to do, and you build all the logic in there. If this happens, then do that. So it's a sequence of events that you're doing to configure your systems. DSC is a different approach. DSC is just declaring, I want this to be in a certain state. So when can you use, let me just move that, sorry. I like to be moving a bit more. So when can you use DSC, and what can you use DSC for? The first thing is you can use DSC to configure pretty much any resource, either by using an existing DSC resource or just building your own resource. And the main difference with a script, when you run a script, is the execution is idempotent. What does that mean? You have a state, and it will always converge to another state. And by that I mean, when you make sure that a file has a certain value in it, if you just want to add that value, let's say I want a file to have the value AAA at the end of the file. If you just add AAA at the end of the file, next time you run it, you will have it twice. This is not idempotent. And the problem is DSC would not be reliable if it was using this way, and that's the problem with imperative scripts. What we want is test first whether that file has this string at the bottom of its file. And if it doesn't have it, just implement it. And that's a basic principle of DSC. DSC is just trying to implement some idempotency into the execution of the script. It sounds very technical, but in principle, it's just to make sure when we run the same configuration twice, we're just not adding errors into the configurations of those systems. So what DSC looks like? Instead of having a command that you run, on that command, the first time you run will be fine. Add Windows feature, Windows Server backup. But if it's already installed, some commands may fail. And this is not this is not what you expect. What you really care about is whether or not it's present. So you want, that's not going to work. So you want to make sure your configuration, make sure that it ensures that this Windows feature backup is present. So you want to make sure you convert to a given state. And that's the key element of DSC. You declare what state you want to be in. And that makes it much easier to manage. Imagine you have 1,000 lines imperative script. What you only care about in the end, at a high level, is the declaration of the state you want the machine to be in. That's a lot of concepts in 2 minutes. Everyone's with me? Any question? No? That's okay? That's the key principles behind DSC. You just write a document, and that's a document which is declarative. That means it's about the state, not about the execution of the commands. And that will eventually converge onto your node. Yes?
When you say future is there, but the name is different. Sorry. If the name is different, what will we do?
So at the moment, we're just making sure that the Windows Server backup will be installed. On that resource, Windows feature, we call it the way we want, and that's for our own reference. And we make sure that this element of that resource is being configured. Good question. He's in the race for these things. All right? But that's a good question. So, changing the layout a bit. So, in DSC, what you do to configure your systems, your nodes, you start by writing this configuration. And as I said, the configuration is one document. And from that document, you compile what is called a MOF, which is just an artifact that DSC uses under the hood. You probably shouldn't need to know too much about it, at least at a high level. It's a very bad format. Everyone knows that. It's like there's no surprise. If you have to write a MOF by hand, it's a nightmare. If you had to read it, and you did sometimes, it's a nightmare. But that's what we're dealing with. So you compile this configuration into a MOF. And this, it's kind of, you can think about the serialization like JSON, but in much worse. And this is what you distribute to your systems. On your systems, just execute that configuration document. So it applies it. There's no runtime variable. It just, everything is defined up front. And then you send it in different ways. You can have the node pulling it, which is the pull model. So the node is asking, do I have a new configuration document assigned to myself? Or you can push it, saying to the node, this is your new document, please apply this one now. So the difference is the pull model is decoupled, so you don't have to interact with the nodes interactively. You don't have to communicate to the nodes interactively. The nodes will eventually converge, which is a very specific concept in configuration management. And in a push model, every time there's a new value, you need to send it to the node. So it's much more, it's a bit more high touch. You need to be a bit more directive. And that means if you are too directive and you've got many, many nodes, you're not really doing configuration management, you're creating a sequence. You're starting doing some kind of orchestration. So it's two very different types of model, but you can still use DSC to do both. A lot of more concepts in another 2 minutes. Have I lost anyone? All right, so that was the very quick introduction, the shortest I've done in a long time. So if you have no more questions, I will just go a bit like explaining what's going on with the new DSC. So who's been following the DSC planning updates? There's been blog posts about DSC and the planning updates. Okay, just a few hands. Who's heard of DSC Core or DSC V2? No one. All right, so a lot of catch up to do here. That's the latest blog post, which is just a few days ago during PSConf. So Michael Green, Michael Green is the PM, so the product manager for DSC. He is, product manager, I'll give you a bit of context. In Microsoft, it's really the same type of an agile development environment. You have the development team, what they usually call the engineering team, and you have the product owner, which they call the PMs, product manager, right? And most of the time they have at least one PM for the development team. And Michael is the PM for that team, for the engineering team behind DSC. And DSC has evolved, as I said, since 2012 R2. And the latest release came at the same time as WMF 5.1. And that's the latest. There was one version before, or maybe two if you count the updates. But the first version was WMF 4, second version WMF 5 and 5.1, which is pretty much the same. And in the latest one, the major changes was using PowerShell classes instead of MOF-based for script resource. I won't go I won't go into too much details, but if you have questions, feel free to ask. So this DSC planning update is just a follow-up from the previous ones. So for the last, I'd say maybe 2 years, we've got a few, not enough, but we've got a few updates and for the DSC team to show the directions they were taking. And initially they said, we are going to stop investing in DSC 5.1. That means that because of the way PowerShell and the Windows Management Framework works, there will be no further update in PowerShell, Windows PowerShell. That means no update in WMF 5.1. That means no update into the current DSC. That's clear? No more updates there. But the team has been busy working on what they called DSC v2 or the native LCM, and it has also been called before DSC core. Like there were a lot of names, and those planning updates were explaining the evolution of the thinking at Microsoft. And I will try to summarize. The initial thinking was to create something that could be used, that could be open sourced and used by anyone, and that would be just the agent that runs in your machine that could be open sourced. And they changed their mind, and that was a big disappointment for the community, to say the least. And they changed their mind to say, well, if we are developing this, we need to make sure we have customers that are using it very early, and we need to make sure we can make sure that the development is actually solving problems for someone, creating value. And the first customer they could look at was Azure. So there's good and bad. The bad is they're developing, for the community is bad because it's developed privately at the moment. It's good because they're developing something which is used on millions and millions and millions of machines. So there's the two sides. And that means they have a customer which is forcing them to solve actual problems, and at a very huge scale. So they haven't completely abandoned the idea of open sourcing it, but it's not going to happen, it's not planned, it's not in the roadmap. The roadmap usually happens over 6 to 9 months, I would say, and it's not going to happen into the next 6 to 1 month. I'm saying this, I'm not saying this because I'm at the moment working with Microsoft. That's my judgment. So I might be proved wrong, but in my opinion, it's very unlikely. That doesn't mean that you can transform and changing from your imperative scripts to using DSC or any other configuration management solution in the same amount of time. It's a big undertaking. So that should not stop you to try to evolve your infrastructure using configuration management practices. So far, so good? Question? Yeah.
To understand, you're not investing anymore in the current DSC version.
So to repeat the questions, then are they not investing into the current DSC version?
Yeah.
DSC 5.1? No, because there's no way to create new updates.
So there's no value in any of us implementing DSC 5.1 at the moment because
That's wrong, because by the time I would say you implement 5.1, maybe there will be something else. Maybe there will be some changes.
okay, but
Things are
likely
moving
it'll
and
be
there's a
wasted
lot of
effort, right?
No, it's not.
Just to interject, there is no DSC implementation for PowerShell core. So even if you went to PowerShell 6 or 6.1, 6.2.7, you're going to DSC. So if you want any kind of configuration management, you still got Windows PowerShell, 5.1.
Right. Okay.
For now.
And then this is only being developed for Azure at the moment, not for anything on-premise.
Currently, not completely. So I will get into more details, but the current service is an Azure service. They will, and actually pretty soon, probably release a hybrid version. So your control servers to some extent is on Azure, but you have a way to manage on-prem nodes where you still need that connection. There's actually, and I'm going to send the link, I think it's the next slide, here you go. This is a survey that I want all of you to take today and then share, like, are you using DSC currently? There's 5 questions, quite easy, but that would be very good for you to just do this.
I just wanted to ask everyone who has a question, just can you tell the name first? That we make a note, right?
Yes, he's struggling for the good questions. That's why people are asking questions. I forgot about it already. Yeah. So definitely, if you want to share what is your environment and what kind of user scenarios you have, definitely look at this survey and then fill it and tell us where you are at the moment, what usage you would have, and that is really helpful. There's already, I think, a few hundreds answers I checked earlier today, and we would love to see more of those. And you don't have to use DSC, just make sure, like, if you are planning to use DSC or if it's something that might be interesting for you at some point, feel free, you can influence. So that's a key element, and I really, if there's one thing I want you to take away today, is you are, customers, you are influencing the development team. That's the key element. If you're not telling someone at Microsoft what you want, well, it's unlikely that it's going to happen. So be engaged in the community, talk about it, and then make sure you voice your concern. What's your name?
No. Does it include the DSC usage on the client?
Say again?
So these, I think you're referring it to do it to make the configuration changes on the server based on those questions. But what about if I say I use it for my client or Windows 10 machine when I build the machines or something like that? Does it include?
You can. So whatever usage of DSC, we need to know more about what is your current usage. So I can't show you the thing right now, but anyway. So whatever the usage you're doing, please fill that form. That applies to everyone. For instance, we understand that there's more people trying to use it for clients than for servers. It's fine. We just need to know about it. And there might be works that goes along those lines to help this usage, because there's very, very well-known limitations about DSC because it runs as system. When you want something to run in a user context, it's not impossible, but very difficult and very impractical to do. Answer the question? Yeah. Kind of. Yeah. All right, it's good. I'll take it. So please fill that form. So DSC v2 is not DSC v2 yet. So you didn't see all the background, but the idea is, because it's an Azure service and it's used already in many Azure services, and I will get into some details in a bit, it's not the replacement like for the current DSC LCM, which is built in Windows. And to the questions again, is it worth implementing 5.1? I can get into more details later, which is a bit more technical, but I would say yes, definitely. First of all, because it helps with your transformation, the digital transformation of your company, because it's the beginning of configuration management. And if you don't want to use DSC, because DSC is a platform, not a solution. I will get to that in a second. But DSC is a platform. If you want to use Chef or Puppet or Ansible, they've got very good integration with the LCM. So you can run from those platforms, you can run DSC resources on your machine. Anyone using any of those? DSC, Chef, Puppet? 1, 2, 3, 4? Not that many, okay. So that tells me that most of you haven't started your configuration management journey, and you're still doing, I assume, a lot of imperative scripts. So you have a big script, probably to deploy something on your machine, which is fine, but as you scale, it makes it very hard to change. And that's one of the key capability in IT, infrastructure management, is managing change. So imagine if you've got a 1,000-line script. It's easy to run, it works perfectly well. The problem is, when you try to change it, you start making mistakes. And then the more you need to change, the faster you need to iterate through that script. It's harder. So one of the ways to do it, creating modules, creating testing, having a better testing environment, using Pester as an example. But when you go further and you have a bigger infrastructure, when you start to scale, this is when you need configuration management. Okay so far? Yes, that's a lot, I know. So those slides actually from Microsoft, I don't know them really well, I actually got them only this morning, but I just wanted to show you a bit the thinking behind what's going on with the new service. There's different offerings in around DSC and configuration management in Azure. And what you need to understand, and that's a key element, is Microsoft is not in the configuration management business. Microsoft, the current under Satya, the current drive is mobile. Sorry, it's not mobile first anymore, right? It's cloud first. It's just cloud first. All right. So that means they understand where, as this kind of size of company, their investment is going for the cloud. And they're just trying to make sure everything for the cloud, everything that would help you being successful in the cloud, they are a provider for it. They don't try to compete with another cloud. This is not even the goal. The goal is to make you successful. If you're successful in Azure, then that means you're going to buy Azure, right? That means you're not going to need to go somewhere else. So that's the mentality, right? It's not about competing with someone, it's about making sure you are successful. And that's why configuration management is not necessarily something they want to do. If it helps you, and that's why you have to tell them that you need something, if it helps you, then they will invest in helping you managing your infrastructure. Okay, good so far? Yes? Question? What's DSC? He knows. Do you want the mic? So any questions about DSC first? No? Everyone understands roughly what DSC is about? Yes? Okay, there's a bit of an example in a bit. So these are the different, so I don't know if I'm good. So this is the service, this is the current services in Azure. And if you're not too familiar with DSC, are you interested in Azure services with DSC? Yes, okay, I can see people saying yes, yes, we want some. All right, I'm not the best person to actually ask those, but I will try to give you an overview, and if you have questions, this is where I can probably help more. So there's different type of services. Everyone's heard of Azure Automation DSC? Yes, that's the service that is using exactly the same protocol on the LCM 5.1 from WMF 5.1. So that's the service in Azure that you can have access to. So the goal of this service or state configuration is to enforce something, which is not what the current, at the current point, the new LCM, the DSC v2 LCM, maybe I should explain what LCM means actually. I've been using it for a while. LCM is the local configuration manager. And in DSC, this is the agent, which is just a Windows service running on your machine. DSC is separated into different components if you want. There's the PowerShell commands, the DSL, which is what you run to create the configuration. And there's the LCM running on the machine. And then you can have an extra component, which is the pool server, which is what I explained earlier, where the LCM is querying the pool server to make sure it's got new configurations to apply. Good? So this is the service, which is a turnkey solution for DSC, and you can do pretty much everything in the cloud, and then it configures your machine, and you have the list of your machines, and it can tell you if it's compliant, not compliant. This is to enforce configuration. It's very useful, and that's the only solution. That means the only solution from Microsoft is on the cloud. That's already the case, right? And this is where you have the reports, you have all the data coming back to the server, and everything's in Azure. You can't run this. You can run this completely internally, right? You can use it. You can manage internal nodes, but the reporting will always be in Azure.
Is there a cost for that?
I can't remember. Yeah, there is it $6 per?
Yeah,
oh no.
It's free if you're running in Azure.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Do you know more details, right?
No, I don't. I just...
Okay, so it's free if you run in Azure. I think it depends how often you actually refresh. So the LCM can pull at different intervals. And the more intervals you have, well, the shorter the interval, the more pulling it does, so the more cost there is to it. I think that was the rough. I can get back to you if that's of interest.
Isn't there like a reporting server that you can deploy on premises?
Yes. So this is the Azure solution. The reporting server is only an API endpoint, if you want, that gather the information. There's no user interface to it. So everything goes straight into a database. And the last update, which was very recent with Server 2019, is actually allowing you to have a SQL Server as a backend. Before that, it was only EDB or MDB for the details. But that means you still need to plug in whatever reporting you want or visualization you want on top of that SQL Server. There's a very nice project from Ben Gelans. He actually presented that last week at PSConf EU. So whenever the videos are released, he's got a what is it called? DSC Pool Server admin PowerShell module that allows you to do all the management and transfer from an EDB or MDB solution to a SQL backend. More questions? No. So that is unforeseen configuration with DSC. But the new LCM is actually the new DSC v2 LCM. Is completely rewritten, so it's a new code base, it's cross-platform, and it's based on C++, and it allows you to run different type of workloads, so it's compatible with PowerShell core. That's one of the elements. And this is used in at least 3 or 4 services in Azure, and inventory is one of those. And the other one, this is to discover the state of the environment. And another one is change tracking. It makes sure that the changes going on in your nodes is tracked over time. And I'm just going quite quickly. If I have time, I will get back to this. And update management. So Azure released update management, which is a service so that you can manage your updates on your system. And that is another service. For you, you don't see any DSC. It's just a point-and-click solution. But under the hood, it uses the new DSC LCM. And that's the point I was making earlier. They have a customer, Azure is the customer, and they're already building services that you can use from this. The new LCM is not feature complete if you compare it to the current 5.1, we've got in Windows PowerShell. And that's the point. They can't release it as a new DSC until it's feature complete, because it doesn't do enforcing at the moment. So you can't set a configuration based on the new DSC LCM, the v2. So that's why it's not open to the public yet. It's not even available to the public. You can just use services by using those in the background. Make sense? Kind of. Yes. Adam. 2 seconds.
So is that the update management?
Sorry?
So is
Yes.
to use it to install like an agent on the PC, on the server, which we then reports back. Is it the same thing used for DSC, the new DSC?
So it's a different extension. So the way it works in Azure, you have extension that you deploy when you deploy your VM, and it uses the same code base, like one part of the binary, if you want, within an extension is the same as DSC, the new DSC. But for you, it's transparent. It's just an Azure extension that you install.
So maybe rephrase the question. If I installed agent for that bit,
It doesn't conflict with any DSC thing. No.
okay, so then to use DSC, I will need to install something else.
Yes, it's something else.
Okay.
Yes. And that's the goal, is to make sure you can install things in parallel. And that's also why the current set is not implemented. And I'll get into the details very soon.
If you're going to install 2 LCMs in parallel, is not
Because the LCM has nothing to do with the previous LCM. That's why the LCM v2 is built to be very lightweight, very specific, and doesn't conflict to have 2. It's not the old LCM, which you can only have 1 working.
But you need to make sure that you're only using 1, otherwise you're...
No, it doesn't matter. So the current implementation, so I'm going to get into the details now. So the current at the moment, so if you're familiar with DSC, there's 3 main functions that DSC does for any given resource, which is get, to retrieve the informations that you have for this resource, the test, to see if the resource that you configured with the parameters is compliant or not compliant, so return true or false, and the set, which is if you tested return false, you need to make sure you converge, so you will set the new configuration. The current DSC LCM does not implement these 3, only the get and the test. So you can do a get and a test with many, many different LCM. There's no problem with conflicts. That's why at the moment, this is not a problem. And this is also why they haven't implemented it yet, but this is this is one of the next things they will work on. And I think, yeah, I will have a bit more details on that in a bit. That explains it. More questions? No? Yes? Okay, that's fine. I'll switch. So Azure Automations, automate regional error processes. I'm just going to skip to see. So that's the new thing. Azure policy guest configuration. And currently, this is one of the very new services which has been released. Is it? I don't know if it's GA. I don't think it's GA yet. No, it is GA. I think this service is GA. What is going to be released is some new scenarios within this, and I will get a bit more details if I have time later on. The principle here is you have the get and the set, and that is enough to audit all your machines. And that's the first use case at the moment, is for IT governance in the cloud. When you let someone deploy a new VM, you want to make sure like the certificate is not expired, they are configuring the right policies without stopping them to do so. So you want to have the reporting. And that's what it's used at the moment, a lot of reporting and gathering data for how your machine is configured. So then you can make sure if someone is doing something wrong, you can help them and correct. At the moment, you can't correct directly from Azure guest configuration because it doesn't implement the set. So you can't enforce it. It's for a different use case as DSC. DSC, especially in pull mode, is very useful when you want to converge to a state. This is not to converge to a state, is want to make sure that it's compliant with whatever policy you created. Okay, so far? I know people are... There's a bit more fun stuff coming after that. Chris? Hold on, Chris.
So this is, I just wanted to confirm, so this it's cloud service provided in Azure, but
yes,
you can run it on-premise?
So the running on-premise at the moment is not, it's not available for hybrid scenarios. Okay. It might be very soon. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I think they're targeting for this month or very soon to have an hybrid scenario. That's going to come next.
Okay,
yes.
cool.
But that means hybrid is still running on Azure, right? So that's what the planning for DSC technology. So at the moment, we have Azure state configuration and guest configuration. So state configuration is the extension, one of the extensions that you can manage and enforce settings. And then at the moment, if you are using DSC, and that kind of answer to your questions that you had earlier, if you learn and if you use DSC today, it's a good investment because eventually all the services will converge to the new DSC, at least on Azure, right? If by that time you still don't want to use any of Azure, you will need something else, something different. That might happen. Stay tuned. That's all I can say right now.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can I put everything in a pipeline? And I run this DSC on a pipeline?
Yeah.
Azure DevOps pipeline or something else?
Yes. So can you put everything on a pipeline? Yes. It's not necessarily the way. It's not necessarily the way that it would be the easiest when you look at it, because that means instead of using the interface, you will have to use the PowerShell commands or the API. But technically, all the artifacts can be built on your own if you want, and then released. So there's actually, for guest configuration, which is the new LCM, so for the old DSC as example, the 5.1, you can compile it, compile your MOF either on the service, which personally I don't recommend, and it's much better to compile your DSC MOFs directly on your pipeline, and then pushing them to Azure when you need to configure your systems. For the new DSC configurations, there's actually a GitHub project which is called RFC guest configuration, which shows you, which is not released yet, or maybe just preview, but you can compile those. It's not really a MOF, it's a package, and more details will come with the documentation very soon. But it's a package that you can compile in your pipeline, and then you can push it and assign it in Azure.
I have another question, depend on that one. Right? I create a package, release it, everything, so I installed everything, but then Daniel comes and installs something on the server.
Well, that depends on your management of, it depends on how you manage your pipeline and how you manage your server. So that's one of the big principles behind configuration management in general. You don't want any change to happen directly on the servers. All the change should go through a pipeline. Yeah. That's the goal, right?
What will happen when you change something, and will you look for the state that on the package, or will you look for that one? So
it depends. If you're looking at the old DSC, that can enforce the settings. So if Daniel that's the general rule with DSC, which is managing configuration drift. If you set a configuration with a document saying, this is the state I want to be in, Daniel comes and changes something, it will revert Daniel's changes. That's managing configuration drift.
Only if they're in the config.
Only if it's in the config. Yes. And that's the tricky part, but they'll find out. Yes, so if you don't specify something, you won't be checked and managed.
Sorry, so can I just summarize? 'Cause,
There's a lot of content there.
yeah.
This is already 3 sessions that I should do, yeah.
Yeah, so currently in Azure, you have Azure State Configuration, which is based on the current 5.1 DSC.
I have adopted, because there's Azure Automation 5.1 DSC. I confuses myself, to tell you the list. Let me just get back on that. But yes, it enforces, yes, state configuration.
And then in parallel, they have Azure Policy Guest Configuration, which does the get and the test of based on the new DSC v2.
Yes, it does only auditing at the moment, what we call
And
governance.
then in the future, they're going to release Azure Guest Configuration, which will do the set.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's still called guest configuration, but they will eventually, they are starting to work on the set, or they will at some point shortly probably start working on the set. And that means it's going to take a month to get there. Is that preview yet or not? No, they haven't started. It's not preview, it's nothing. But everything's relative, right? I can't say everything, but I can tell you exactly where they're at and what line of code they are at.
Okay.
Right? But
So it's a Microsoft secret.
yeah, kind of. It's work in progress. Let's put it like this. There's other things going on in the pipeline, right? So which one, when it's going to be released, is not something they can tell because they don't know. And it also depends on user adoption, right?
Just want to confirm one other thing. So what you're saying is if you use DSC today, you can continue using that once they release all of the Azure capability. The syntax will remain the same. It's just the underlying, they're getting rid of the stupid MOF files and they're using PowerShell core.
Well, technically, are they going to completely remove the MOF files? Probably not in the short term. They probably will eventually, but it's not a problem at the moment, right? It's not the main problem at the moment, let's say. So eventually, they probably no, it's not the main one. Trust me.
Are you sure?
Yes. So they will get there eventually, but that's probably not going to be in the first release, right? And they have no necessity to do it. They first have to make sure they have the set scenario, and they need to be backward compatible with the MOF, most likely. So that's another element. But ideally, everything will work. It's just going to change what is the engine behind the scenes.
Sorry, one more question. Did you say
You're not
that?
going to get the merc. Don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
don't worry about that. I just want to know. I just want to answer the questions. Did you say that Server 2019 does ship with the new LCM?
Nope.
No.
I said the pull server in Windows 2019. The pull server supports SQL backend,
Okay.
but that's for the 5.1 LCM.
Okay, so there's no LCM, the new version of LCM available.
It's only through the services at the moment. They already have, I don't know how many millions of machines using it. They don't want you to come and ask more questions about it. No, I'm not. I'm making a joke there, but the idea is they're using the services, and when they will merge these two different types of enforcing configuration. Then this is when you will be able to use it through Azure services. That means compiling your configuration and apply it to servers to enforce things. Before this, the audit will be the same principle where you will compile your MOF, but it's not going to do the set. It will just make sure that whatever MOF you compiled is compliant or not compliant. So it will report, is it compliant or is it not compliant? So it's the same principle. You compile the MOF, you package it in some ways, which is assigning to which server it needs to be implemented, so looked at, and that's it. No more questions. Come on, last one.
So how does it do that? If it's compiling them off, and presumably it's pushing it to the server, or the server's pulling it.
I will send you a link. That's very specific questions, and I can't really answer that. I will send you a link to a PowerShell repository, which explains this kind of thing. Sorry, a GitHub repository, where you can see the PowerShell and things going on. And there might be a video or two by Michael that explains these things. If you look in YouTube, guest configuration, you can find that. Art of DSC. So, do you want a break? Let me just have a break. I know it's empty. Damn it. Any questions? Are you okay with this? Like, I'm trying to show you what DSC, the old DSC, is about. I showed you like some kind of work in the process and why a new DSC LCM is probably not what you expect and not what you will be using in the next 6 to 9 months, I would say, because this is where the roadmap is being built out at the moment. So this is not something you're going to use a like for like with the existing DSC. If you are on Azure or if you are planning to go on Azure, definitely look at guest configuration because that will help you doing a lot of the audits, a lot of governance of your cloud, and soon enforcing configurations. Or you can already use the other services for enforcing. So that will just be probably a merge in the backend system that you don't have to deal with.
Sean, is there any, I guess, in terms of the Azure reporting and the DSC reporting, is there any connectivity between the two, or any plans? Because obviously you might have, you've got the portal in Azure reporting on the testing, and then you might obviously be enforcing via DSC or setting through the old version 1.
So I'm not sure I understand the question. You want to know if there's connectivity between which report server? Do you talk about the pool server in the 5.1 version of the LCM? Yeah. So at the moment, if you want to use something like if you want to have the reporting capabilities that you have in Azure, you have to use Azure to do it. You can use the Azure capability on-prem, but you have to do this. If you have your own pool server, there's no connectivity between those two, because it's a slightly different backend if you want. There's more features in the Azure one than in the DSC pool server as we know it. So if you want, no more questions? Just, yeah, you have one more question.
I've
Want a break?
I've got a question. This policy guest configuration in the testing mode sounds very much like inspect to me.
Oh, that's a very good question. You know that. So is anyone familiar with Chef Inspect? A bit? All right. Chef Inspect is a way to audit configurations on your system. So Azure guest configuration, Azure policy guest configuration actually is a provider model, so then you can have either DSC to the reporting or you can have Chef Inspect to the reporting. So it's a high-level service that can hand off the actual details of gathering the data either to Chef Inspect or to DSC. And the idea is maybe later enable the systems. I don't know, Puppet Facts as an example. Maybe, but this is not on plan at the moment. But that gives you the idea of the provider model. So then you could use maybe Chef Inspect and DSC to gather compliance data. Thank you. Very good point. I might need to go a bit faster now. I just wanted to talk a bit about the art of DSC and just to give you an idea of what's going on and what the community looks like at the moment. If you're not familiar with DSC, you probably don't know about the DSC Resource Kit. The DSC Resource Kit is a collection of DSC resources maintained by the community, initiated by Microsoft a long time ago, but with many contributions coming from, open source contribution coming from the community. Everything is under this repository, and there's links in the DSC resource and XDSC resources. There's a lot of links to all the resources. There's about 55 resources at the moment, a module, and many more resources. And I'll get into that in a bit more details. But if you want information about what are the best practices for DSC resource, for writing your custom resources, or what should be followed, or what the community aims to follow, let's put it like this, this is where you will find all the information. At the moment, it's under the PowerShell team, DSC resources. And under that, you have information about best practices, what we recommend for style guidelines, and there's a lot of help with the scripts and templates that you can have access to make sure you build in the same way as the community does it. So we talked about the release pipeline, and you want to put all your changes through a pipeline or not having individual users remoting, like using RDP or even partial remoting to make changes to your machine. You want everything to go through a pipeline. And there was a talk by Michael Green in WinOps 2017, and it's available on YouTube. And I really recommend to look at the Microsoft white paper. which has been written by Michael Green and Stephen Morosky. And this is about 55 pages PDF. And it's very good information to how you need to create your pipeline to make change to your infrastructure. I probably won't have time to go through this. So that's an element I wanted to explain you is the principles behind configuration management. We've been doing configuration management forever. We just evolved quite recently into different practices. And I want to, that's a mental model that I use to explain people the difference of the evolution. And initially we've done just using the GUI, point and click and making changes, especially in the Windows world. In the Linux world, it's more, it started with very early in the 0.5, I call it, which is just a transform script. So running commands, creating bash scripts for Linux. But this is a way to see it. So you create a script and you execute the script. This is a scripted transform. It's not state management, it's a transform. And then we started seeing CF Engine, Puppet, Chef, and all these started from the principle that we want to manage the state because it's much easier to communicate about and to review a state than all the transforms. It's an abstraction level. And this is configuration management version 1.0. And then there's many declinations in this. Ansible, as an example, allows you to do this, but allows you to do many other things, which I would not say is considered best practices for configuration management 1.0. It's more for provisioning, as an example. And then we have the container model, which is going even further in the configuration management. We don't manage state after the deployment. It's only focused at building an artifact, which can be a container image, and then running this artifact in production. But if anything happens that needs to change to that, we are not going to update it. We create a new image with the new version, and we will replace the running image with a new version. So it's the same principle, and we're just shifting left the configuration. So we less and less going directly to the machine. We're just shifting left into the pipeline, and then we prepare the image and we prepare the artifact, and we manage the artifact, and then we release them over time. Do you want to see a quick demo of Packer? Yes? Some people like Packer. So, who's using VMware? Just a quick question. I want to see. All right, quite a few. Who's using Hyper-V? Oh, never seen that many people using Hyper-V, actually. Like, there's more people here than in a bigger room that we had at the PSConf. But anyway, the principle is the same with Packer, which is a tool from HashiCorp. You can just have a different driver, or in that case, a different builder, and then you can apply the exact transformation to a Windows installation image, and then install, and then create a template. Or you can create, this one is to create a VMware template, but the same principle would apply with a different configuration for Hyper-V template. So this is I've done, I have a very, very basic ESXi with a VCSA server running, which is my vSphere environment. And I just want to show you I have some cache in there. And I want to run and execute a Packer template. You've seen Packer already. I think Mark Grosser did some session on Packer a few months ago. I assume you all know Packer, right? Packer is just a tool to execute an installation from a code without any human interaction. And this is what the template look like. It's just a JSON script with some variables and also some scripts that you will run and you can put on the machine, and it will be executed during your installation sequence. And this is the configuration of your VM, the configuration of your ISO that I'm using. In that case, I can either directly download from Microsoft, or I can use, and you will see I use a quick script to just inject my own ISO. Who's using Packer already? 1, 2, good. In 5 months, I need at least half of you doing it. So this is a quick PowerShell script I just did to wrap around Packer. So then it's easier for me to just know the parameters because I can't remember them. And what I'm doing here, I'm just running Packer or through that script. I'm just calling with some parameters. And Packer is just an application that you can do show quality install Packer as an example. And it will install a new machine and to execute this against your ESXi. Yes, it's using floppy disk because of the way Windows works when you install it. So automatically Windows will look for an unattend.xml file to start its installation process. Otherwise, it will ask the user with a GUI, what do you want? And you have to click things. But if you have a removable media, like a floppy disk, it will automatically look for the unattend file. So it's starting the VM, and you can access to VNC. You can access the actual VM. And that's, I think, what I'm going to do here. So you see the unattend file. This is the XML file of unattend, which is answering the basic questions that Windows needs before it starts doing anything. So this is, I can still access the screen of the machine over VNC to make sure it's doing what I want it to. And you can see this is a standard installation setup. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to touch it. I don't even need to look at the screen, but it shows you what's going on in the background. So it created a new VM in vSphere, actually on the ESX server. It loaded the ISO, loaded the floppy disk, booted the VM, making sure I'm installing it based on the unattend file. And after that, it will, as soon as WinRM is connected, or got it. So as soon as WinRM is available, it will start sending the commands to finish the build. And I will show you in a bit what type of command. There's only one command on this template. So it's trying to connect to VM via VNC to make sure it works. And then it's finished the initial boot sequence and installing. So now it's waiting for WinRM. So this is sped up a bit because we don't have that much time. You know how Windows works, right? And this is in my Packer template. The only command I have is a Windows restart. So as soon as I've installed, the first thing it's going to do is going to restart. And after that, there's a few commands that I have in Runance. If you're familiar with an attend, there's some configurations you can do, like enabling WinRM and changing the network profile to be private. Otherwise, the firewall will block your WinRM connections. And when it's available, it will start sending the first command, and the first command will be, so it's still waiting for WinRM to be available. That's the response to say WinRM is there. And now it will connect and sending the machine restart, which is what I have in my template. And the next element it will do, it's finished the build process. So Packer will execute a shutdown command, which is just running sysprep. So you can see my shutdown command is a sysprep file. It's a bat file. It's just running sysprep with the command parameters, which is OBE and generalize and stuff like this. And what it's going to do is going to sysprep the machine. So if you're not familiar, that will remove the SIDs. And so then next time it boots up, it's a unique machine. And I will be able to create a template out of it. And this is what Packer allows you to do with the post processor. So from the post processor, you say, I want to create a VMX template, or I want to create just a VM. So you can do this using Packer. So I think it just shut down. It's compacting virtual disk. It's cleaning up the VMware files because we don't need them afterwards. And now it goes to the post processor, which is using in that configuration vSphere template, and it will create the template for me. So the whole process took about 20 minutes, so I just compacted it for a demo. And so the build is finished, and you can see marking as template is done. So I will show you now in vSphere, I will have a new template available. And I've done no interaction, so I could have let it run, and that could be part of my pipeline. I have a golden image, and I have a template I can reuse for configuration. And from there, you can configure as much as you want, or as little as you want, before you hand it over to a configuration management system. So I can run and execute this new VM from this template. Right, makes sense? So that creates a golden image. So now, if we've got a bit of time, yeah? We can look at what we can use this template with PowerShell, DSC, and Chocolatey. PowerShell DSC mainly. So in this sequence, we configured very basic things. So we configured WinRM, configured the network to make sure it's on a private profile, and I think that's pretty much it. There's not much customization to the image. So that's really just an installation. You can imagine that I've patched the ISO before I actually applied it. So it's pretty much patched already. There's not much to do to this. And I will start customizing this golden image into a new template. But for that, I want to use DSC. I have another demo here. So actually, is it the right demo? I'm not sure. Oh yes, sorry. So I'm going to show you here. Too late. Let me do it again. Sorry. So if you look at on the right, this is my repository with all my Packer scripts. But I also have a folder where I have my DSC configurations, modules, and then my kitchen YAML. And what I'm going to show you is what's happening. So I have my DSC configuration, a very simple configuration, as I showed you earlier. And I will show you using Test Kitchen, which is a tool that you can use to spin up a new VM, execute your DSC configuration onto that VM, validate it with a pester script, and then if everything finds and works properly, then just destroy that VM. So for test-driven infrastructure development, this is the workflow that you should be using. Question? No. So the first thing I do is I do a kitchen create, and what that does is looking at my YAML configuration and says, I need to create one VM to run this configuration. So it just spins up a new VM for me. And it's a bit slow because my computer was doing too many things at once at that time. Speed up. So it's creating, that's the name of the VM created, and it's still using the same vSphere environment that I have. You just spin up this new machine by cloning the VM. I could use, if you're familiar with the VMware, I could use instant clone or linked clone, depending on your version, and that would be much faster than this. I just didn't want to set this up for this. I'm on 6.5, so I don't have instant clone, for instance. So this is, you can see that the VM is being created directly into my vSphere environment. So now that it's created and it's returning into Test Kitchen saying, yes, I'm creating the VM, I can execute my configuration scripts that I wrote in PowerShell. So remember that we did a sysprep. So in the sysprep, we left an unattend XML very basic. So then we don't have to do any interaction when the machine spins up. And that's why this is the first time it boots, and it should automatically be configured with the basics information that we did in the Packer template. There you go. And very soon, it will return here, and it will say, yeah, the machine is ready and available. There you go, kitchen is finished. So what I'm about to do now is converge, which is take this configuration that you wrote, which is just a DSC configuration, compile them off, take the modules it needs, push them to that machine, and then execute this, which is what converge is about, making sure to apply this configuration. So it's going to take some time again. Speed it up a bit. And this is the configuration you see at the top, just installing Chocolatey software, installing the package Git, installing the package Conimu, executing this on the machines. Thank you. It's bootstrapping, is getting everything ready on the machines, pushing the modules, installing them on the remote machine, and then you will see the DSC output coming on there. And there's a lot of output, so that's going to take a while. That's DSC. You can see install Choco, Chocolatey settings. This is configuring your Chocolatey environment directly onto the machine, making sure it works. Problem with verbose output, very verbose. Who wrote that module? Oh, it's me. Sorry. I need to fix that. Question, go ahead.
Can we use Test Kitchen with Azure VMs?
Yes. So Test Kitchen works in a way quite similar to Vagrant and this kind of things. So you can have different driver. So I'm using Test Kitchen with, Test Kitchen is coming from the Chef community, but it's an open source project. But Test Kitchen, I actually talked last year at PSConfU with someone from Chef about all the nice things you can do with Test Kitchen. But to give you a quick summary, you can do this on your vSphere infrastructure, your Hyper-V host, or you can do this on Vagrant, VirtualBox, Azure, AWS. Pretty much like there's a lot of drivers. If you go to Kitchen CI, or I think it's kitchen.ci, the website, and then you will see all the drivers they have. So I've run and it converged and I have no error. So I will run a kitchen verify. Kitchen verify will execute the set of pester tests that I've written with for this configuration. So basically it's a very simple test looking at if I've installed the package. I think I'm going to show you in a second. Oh, I just did. I probably just did. So it's just running, it's copying all the tests into the machine and executing into the remote machine. Everything goes over WinRM. So it's transferring the files, the pester test file, and that's a very basic output of pester, and should have chocolatey and should have installed CunEmu. And now that it's finished, the VM is still there and turned off. I will execute kitchen destroy, and that will just completely clear my VM and nothing's going to be left on my ESX server. So I showed you all the commands, and technically if you just want to test something, if you run kitchen test, it will start by creating the VM, converging, running the verify, and then destroying if everything's fine. If there's an error in any steps of that, it will leave the VM available to you unless you provide the parameter destroy always or something like this. So it's the perfect tool in a pipeline when you're making change to a configuration. I'm done, right? Yeah, so finish destroying, so the machine disappeared now. So, more time, you want to see? So, that one is the same principle as we did. So we created the first Packer template which has pretty much no configuration, only an atom.xml. We made sure that we have the DSC configuration that allows to set some things on the VM. So now I want to reuse this into another template, a Packer template, and apply this DSC configuration. That means I will have my very base VM I called raw, and I will have my base VM with the basic chocolatey configuration. So what that one does is just taking the first template I created, creating a new VM, applying the DSC I just created and tested, and then creating a new template based on this. And this is how you can see you have different layers of VMs or golden image that inherit from another. And that means when you have quite a bit of VMs to change, you can trigger, if you have a change to your base VM, like let's say you just changed, you update something, you can just automatically run all the others. And when you're doing this, managing golden image is much easier because you run it in the evening, the next morning you have maybe 10 VMs ready. And something I didn't say about either this one, Packer or Test Kitchen, is you can also do that in parallel with many nodes. So you can go much faster if you have the resources behind it. So I'm using the same Packer template, and then I'm just using a different template. This one is Win 2019 base, and that one is going to use DSC, and is going to copy the file the first time, and is going to apply the file, and then create the template out of this newly configured machine. So we're cloning the source VM, which is the one we created before from the template. Slow, and imagine that if you're doing an old, well, let's say a Win 2012 machines, and you want to apply patches, that's probably around 7 hours of patching or something like this. So you don't want to be sitting and waiting for it. You want it to be automatic. And you can use Packer to automatically patch the machines as well. I'd prefer try to slipstream in the ISO, and there's a very good module which is called OSD Builder, which uses the DSIM commandlets under the hood to slipstream Windows updates directly to your Win image. A lot of acronyms, but maybe you understood. Waiting, I don't know where I'm at here. There we go, so that's creating the VM base. It will converge. It will execute the DSC configuration. And the configuration, if you remember, it installs CunEmu, Git, and chocolatey. So that means when I create a new template based on that image, I will have all of this software available, ready to use when I instantiate this new template. So it's waiting, again, as we see, it's waiting for the machine to boot. And when the machine is booted, it will wait for WinRM to be available, so then you can execute command to it. And when this will be available, it will say, well, DSC, start executing DSC. The way I do it is a simple, it's a simple file execution, which is run DSC, which is just starting the DSC configuration. Pretty simple. So waiting for, there's a timeout to boot, waiting for WinRM to be available. And as soon as Windows finished, here you go, that's WinRM being available, and is running the provisioning command. Again!
Sorry, am I correct in that I noticed the first time you did the template, you ran packer exe, but this time you've done a PowerShell script?
No, I did the same. I just used a PowerShell script to wrap around. It's a very simple script, just because I can't remember the parameters of packer.
Okay, so it's
I'm just
special behind that.
No, there's nothing special. It's like 20 lines.
Disappointing.
What?
It's disappointing. I thought there might be something.
No. No, I think just packer. I'm not used to packer parameters. I can't remember, so I just use PowerShell, and the auto-completion is much easier to use, in my opinion. So that's the DSC running in my through packer, and when this is finished, it will just clean up the files again and create a template out of it. It's no magic. It's easy, right? Any question? Yes.
I've got a question. When I was started to use DSC several years ago, and the first version, one problem I faced quite a bit is when you write your own custom DSC resource modules, and you want to use them on a machine, you somehow need to get the module onto the machine.
Yes.
So how did you solve this for this scenario where you use third-party tools to push them off?
On this one, it's easy because I don't push them off. I push everything and compare them off dynamically on the node. You don't have to do this. And in one of my modules, I actually have something that pushes them off and the required modules, actually probably using one of Jan's command. So you have a command that actually looks into a moff to see what module is needed. I'll probably steal that from him. Don't tell him. But that's one way of doing it. So you just push all your modules on what you need. And this is useful only when you do a push mode. You can. This is a simple way in using packer on a push mode to some extent, or just running on the machine. But you could also use a pull mode even during this sequence. You just to make sure you have a way in packer to wait for a new state, like I am converged. And one way to do this would be to use Packer's, it's got an HTTP endpoint, and you can change the status there. You can create a Polaris endpoint and have a script which waits for this state to be converged. There's many ways to do it.
Okay.
Yes.
So you wrote some environment validation tests there in Pesta. Is there any point, if you're writing a class-based DSC resource, to writing Pesta tests for it? If you can write Pesta tests for it, surely you can write your test and get to do the same thing?
That's a good question, but so that's the question between. So if where do I start? So there's different elements to this. The question is, you write a DSC configuration that needs to enforce a state. So if the state is convergent, then everything should be fine. Why should I test it? Well, the first reason is you want to verify that, first of all, the configuration is doing what you expect. So it's not the same as testing, as this DSC run what is expected, or am I in the right state? And that would be different type of testing. On OVF is one thing, you test only in a different mean, like not using the DSC resource. Am I in the right state? Am I in the right state, sorry? Have I all the configuration settings that I expect? And that should not be through the DSC resource, because if anything's wrong with this, then you don't know there's a divergence between the two. So that's why you need to test. Yes. And this is the new VM I just instantiated, and then I just run to make sure that which package I add. So first of all, Chocolatey is installed. I only opened the ISE, if you've seen that. And I just run and I can see that the packages I wanted to install have been installed, including Chocolatey. So I have a new image template which got already packages installed on whatever configurations I want to. And I didn't have to do anything because it was all in code between my DSC resource and my Packer template in JSON. Good? More questions? Beer? Yeah. If you have any questions, just grab me. I think you see, no, you don't see. There's another maybe 30-something slides, but I don't want to cover because I think that's enough for tonight. But if you want some more, if you have some more questions, some more things, just ask and I can answer questions. And it's better maybe if it's more interactive because you've been listening to me for far too long now. You must be bored to death. All right, thank you. Any question, feel free, otherwise. More beer?
Yeah, you can have more beer, more pizza. There's still some pizza left. We don't want to throw it away, so please stay a little bit longer, have some conversations.
Yep.
Ask Gael some stuff, so please stick around.